everybody, to Rat Poker Podcast, episode 104. This is presented by Daniel Negreanu's Masterclass of Poker, masterclass.com. If you want to learn how to play poker from Daniel Negreanu, head on over to masterclass.com. Lots of awesome masterclasses over there in all genres: cooking, acting, writing, poker. Phil Ivey's got a masterclass as well. So head on over there and check that out. I am your host, A. Schwartz, alongside producer extraordinaire Roscoe P. Coltrane.
That's called chewing your leg out to get out of the trap, kid.
My absolute favorite PH drop. And Mr. Terrence Chan. T, how are you?
Well, I'm good. It was even good to see Daniel reference that. I don't know if you caught that when he was playing Hellmuth. He actually brought that up because he's heard it enough times now on the show to remember it. I've been taking the master class in air conditioning repair. It's been very helpful. I can vouch for it strongly. No, I'm sweating my balls off here.
You're going to do well. You live up in the middle of BC where the forest fires and the heat wave is crazy. I was actually on Vancouver Island the day it was 40 degrees. We're on the golf course and it was 40 Celsius, which is 112 or something Fahrenheit. It was hotter in Vancouver Island than it was in Vegas in July, which is bizarre. Obviously, crazy weather and stuff going on. I think I jinxed the Vegas Golden Knight. Oh, by the way, Daniel Negreanu is playing the PokerGO Cup. So he is not with us tonight. Hopefully we'll be with us in the next show. But he's got a busy schedule coming up. He's got all kinds of stuff, World Series, of course, starting online, and all kinds of live poker that's going on. We'll certainly touch on some of that here in the show. But last week, I didn't wish the Golden Knights to lose more than, wonder if maybe the fan base needed a little bit more pain before they win something. And they ended up losing. And in the Stanley Cup final now, we have the Montreal Canadiens and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And
another team that needs quite honestly a little bit of pain is the Tampa Bay Lightning, because they've had just entirely way too much success for a 90s expansion team from Florida.
But earned, right? Like, totally earned. Like, they've done it right.
Yeah. They paid their dues.
All the job that the management teams have been done, and it looks like they're going to win another cup. But it's weird cheering for Montreal. I've grown, you and I and Ross, I'm sure a little bit too. When we grow up, we're taught to hate the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're Vancouver Canuck fans, and I find myself cheering for the Habs, and it's a bit of a strange spot to be in.
I never felt the hate for the Habs. I mean, I think when I was a kid, the Habs were just so much better than the Canucks that it wasn't any kind of rivalry. The Leafs were always kind of just bad. So it was more the Leafs and for me, the Flames, because I probably grew up in the era of the Canucks Flames rivalry. So I have no malice towards the Habs. They're the plucky underdogs this time around, and they beat Toronto. So, they get credit for that at least.
Yeah. I really only don't like Calgary. I have a soft spot for Montreal because you grow up like seeing the logo all the time. What's that book? The Hockey Sweater? Every Canadian kid reads that book. Sweater. Yeah.
Canadian sweatshirt.
It was an old CBC short too.
Yeah, that's right. Any forest fire action up there, T? Or you're okay?
It's definitely smelling smoky. There are multiple fires within 50 miles of where I am right now. So we've got our go bag packed, just the essential valuables. And I've everything I need in case if I run out of the middle of the show and we have to evacuate. But yeah, it's definitely a threat here. So, I hope our house isn't on fire.
Are you taking the rabbits with you? Are the rabbits part of
rabbits have been gone for a long time. We haven't had rabbits in a while. The funny thing is that just before COVID, we decided to give the rabbits, rehome them. I couldn't stand to process them after all they'd done for us. And so we rehomed them to somebody who wanted rabbits as pets because we were like, next year we should travel a lot.
Yeah.
Oops, that didn't work out.
All right. A little bit of sad news off the top. World Series of Poker main event champion from 1999, Noel Furlong, the Irishman, passed away recently. And it was great to see a lot of the stories out on Twitter. He was obviously a bigger than life guy in Irish poker. Of course, there's so many, the Irish are characters to begin with. And then, he was even beyond that. And Jesse May actually wrote an interesting tweet thread about Noel, and told the story about when he was at the final table of the World Series. And I thought I'd read that because it was a really cool story. So, and if you want to follow Jesse, he's at Scurrilous May He starts the tweet with, my favorite Noel Furlong story is about poker. It's the hand that won him the World Series of Poker in 1999. Noel had actually made the final table 10 years before when he'd famously driven Phil Hellmuth mad. But he didn't take the game too serious, and he always liked to call himself an amateur and a businessman. And actually, he did have I think he had like $100 million revenue a year flooring business. So he wasn't a professional poker player. He was a businessman first. Jesse continues, apparently Noel was only in Vegas that year because he was on his way home from California, where he'd had a business meeting the month before. But in the main event of the Binions, he made the final table of 6 and a narrow chip lead. And what a final 6 it was. Huckleberry Seed was second in chips, and at that time might have been the best poker player in the world. Huck had played rings around the big boys like Doyle and Chip, the Owl, Johnny Chan. He'd beaten them for millions in California in the 90s while still nearly a teen. They might have got theirs back in the big cash games at the Horseshoe later on, but Huck became World Series of Poker champion in 1996 by crushing the field. He was the young phenom in poker, sporting a tank top, unlaced high tops, and a game with no ceiling at all. Eric Seidel was the other name that remained, though a little short stacked. Seidel was the best that came out of the New York Mayfair Club in the 80s, a crew that settled out west when Vegas poker started to boom. Seidel finished second to Johnny Chan in 1988 and then been tearing up this tournament scene ever since. For Eric Seidel, winning the big one is only going to be a matter of time. There were actually 3 Irishmen among the final 7, which is history in itself. But George McKeever bound out in 7th the night before, leaving Furlong and Padraig Parkinson to carry the flag. Padraig was playing the main event for the first time and hadn't even planned on playing at all. But after weeks in the Horseshoe Cash games, he was in too good a form to let this tourney go by. Stock trader Alan Goring and Swiss Chris Bigler rounded out the final 6. Goring was a total unknown and considered a ranked beginner at the time, but a career of later results confirmed the raw talent behind a bewildering style that looked like he was giving it away. Just side note that we talked about that before, right, Terrence, with Alan Goring, where he was the first guy to min raise in pre-flop min raise, and people
did a lot of weird stuff, drove people crazy. Busted me out of the Legends 10K with like 4 deuce under the gun.
Jesse continues, Bigler was a professional folder, just trying to see how long he could stay.
That's great.
So there was plenty at the final table of 6, but really it was Huck's seed and everybody else, as the prevailing wisdom and all the betting money said it was Huck's tournament to win again. It wasn't the first hand of the final table, but they hadn't played very long when it all went down. It had been setting up the day before, as the final 2 tables on down had been aggressive as hell. There had been no shortage of bosses getting the last raise in. Huck's seed limped under the gun, and Noel Furlong raised it up a little as the next to speak. The other players got out of the way, and when it was back on Huck, he moved all in. Huck moved in with a massive overbet, and he did it because he knew there was no way Noel Furlong could call, and Noel beat him into the pot with the ace-3 of hearts. A lot of smart people have opinions on how good or bad of a call that was, and maybe they're right, but Noel Furlong beat Huck's seed into the pot for all of Huck's chips and most of his own with the ace-3 of hearts. And when Huck turned over Jack-8 of diamonds, it turned out that Noel was pretty far ahead, and the board ran out, and Huck's seed was out too. Calling in that spot with ace-3 of hearts was just not something that was done. It was hard to imagine how different poker was back then, but probably it's not done even now, but it sure as hell wasn't done back then. It wasn't done at the beginning of a $10,000 tournament, and sure wasn't done at the end with 6 players left and a chip lead against the only other player with a fortune in chips. With all the money still to be paid out and $1 million on the line. Some people might go as far to say it was one of the worst calls in poker, but to me, it was always one of the best. And it's one of my favorite calls about which I've ever known. And Noel Furlong won the World Series of Poker with absolutely no fear at all, which is just a great story, right? You know, you talk about ICM and people would look at that now and just go, oh, what are you lighting money on fire and all kinds of stuff. But just a great story.
I mean, people were saying he was lighting on fire then too. And that's I think that's what Jesse's trying to get at, is that, you know, now we would look at that play and say, oh, it's, you know, he should never make that call because ICM. Back then, people were just like, that's insane. Like Huck is supposed to have you beat there. He's supposed to have you crushed. Like, how could you call off your tournament life with ace-3 of hearts? And it was sort of an interesting thing that happened in the sort of early to mid 2000s of poker, sort of well before the solver era and well before like some serious mathematical analysis. The people who started really doing well in tournaments like the main events are people who were not actually afraid to call off your chips. Greg Raymer, in 2004 strikes me as like a prime example of that. He was just like, you know what? Like I'm probably flipping, getting 2-1 here, so it's good, right? Noel Furlong, but yeah, you mentioned off the top. Part of the reasons Noel Furlong can make a call like this: independent businessman, wealthy, doesn't need the money from poker. Of course, $1 million still $1 million to everybody, but yeah, it's just a gigantic. My balls are this big kind of call. But I started getting into poker in 1999. So when this particular World Series was always interesting to me because it was sort of the first one I followed. I remember having back then there was no poker content. You know this, Adam. You were playing poker back then too. But the Discovery Channel had a very brief, like 60-minute documentary on the 1999 World Series. It came out in 2000 in the spring. I was on the rec.gambling.poker website and people were talking about this. And I was like, I was a teenager. I was 18 in 99, but I was so getting into poker. I was like, please, can somebody record this for me on a VHS and mail it to me? Like, I'll pay you, please. Thank you. Somebody did this. I can't even remember whom, but I'm tremendously dead. Oh, wow. I watched the shit out of that VHS of the Discovery Channel. I mean, I don't know if it's out there on YouTube, but if it is, it's great. You can get some really, it probably looks ridiculous now, but I have such nostalgic memories of it. But it's great because Noel goes in and, you mentioned all the characters, Tuxedo and Alan Gehring, who ends up becoming, one of the bosses, and Seidel and Bjorn even, and they look the part, right? It's like they look the part. Like other than Alan Gehring, who looks a little nerdy in his like wraparound visor sunglasses, they look the part. Noel Furlong shows up looking like your grandpa, and just like is just in there. It's just in there with the ace 3 suited, right? For like all the money, all the chips. And it's just he's so unassuming in there. And it's, it's, if it had been what it was at the time, it could have been like a moneymaker effect if there had been poker on TV back then. I think the year before was the Kevin McBride, Scotty Wynn World Series, which I know that you, Adam, have also watched many, many, many times. And Scott McBride was, Kevin McBride, excuse me, was the guy who was sort of like the first real, like, oh my God, how is this amateur doing this against all these pros things? Noel Furlong comes along and actually takes the whole thing down the year after. And then you have this series of this mix of like serious non-professional poker players leading up to Moneymaker, which obviously caps it off.
I'm trying to remember 2000. I don't have it in front of me. I'd have to Google it.
2000 is Chris Ferguson.
Oh, Ferguson, then Varconi, right? 2001?
Yeah, Ferguson and then Varconi, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. But imagine, so 3 Irishmen in the final 7, like, and Patrick
Ferguson, Carlos, and then Varconi.
Oh, okay, Carlos. Yeah. But imagine the party after Noel wins that $1 million and the night with all the Irishmen deep and making money and stuff. And Patrick is a great character, and I've been lucky enough to have a couple of pints with Patrick in a pub here and there. And there's no better storyteller in the world. If you get a chance to bend his ear or let him bend yours, feel free to buy him a pint because you'll enjoy that immensely. And he tells some great stories. If you want to catch up on some Noel stuff too, he definitely did. Patrick's tweet account had definitely had a bunch of neat stories too there. So rest in peace, Noel Furlong, for sure. So let's move on. One of the things that we got to get caught up on a bunch of things. The third high stakes duel between our intrepid co-host, Mr. Daniel Negreanu, and Phil Helmuth took place whilst between shows, and it did not go well for our co-host. Phil Helmuth won the third installment of the high stakes duel, sweeping Daniel, and now he's swept Daniel and Antonio Esfandiari. So he's 6-0 in the format, which,
bringing his heads up streak to 34-0. I believe. I
used to, when he, like, if you asked me 2 months ago about, he always goes, I'm 27-1 in my last heads up matches. I believe it now. Like, I didn't believe it at the time, but I'll tell you,
you don't know how it's possible, but you believe it.
It's totally
That's
believable.
Apex Predator shit, bro.
It is Apex Predator shit, and I'm buying it. He, I don't know how he does it. He continues to win these matches. And, he had the option, I think, to play Daniel again, but he declined. And is now taking on. This is obviously, it's meant to bring eyeballs on PokerGo and the format and the content channel. So Nick Wright from Fox Sports 1, he's a commentator talking head, I believe, on Fox Sports 1. He's now going to play Phil Hellmuth in a high-stakes duel match on PokerGo coming up. So the next series of matches is going to be with Nick Wright.
So not only does he just run this good on the felt,
right? Yeah,
it's like, I have no idea who Nick Wright is or why he's famous other than the explanation you just gave me. I just know that there are literally hundreds of people who would be salivating to be in his shoes and Phil. I mean,
but
what's
at this point? Are they really salivating?
Yes,
he wins. He just wins. That's all he does.
So, like, would you pick a poker player that you've heard of? Would you not back them at even?
Yes, but I'd just be like, okay, where do I send the money? Because I know I'm losing. Like, I don't know. It's anyway. So I didn't watch much of the. I don't know if you watched it, Terrence. I didn't.
A little. You know what? I think I mentioned this in our group chat. I was basically like, so I started watching this. I'm like, I start watching this, and there's like a hand early on where I can't even remember the exact hand, but it's super deep. They're like 100 or 150 big blinds deep or whatever it is. And Hellmuth has, I think, like the 7-4 of spades and raises, and Daniel 3-bets, and he just folds it in position. And I'm like, you have an absolutely brilliant hand to play heads up with. How are you not playing this deep? And then there was another hand where he limps with ace jack suited. Daniel raises with ace queen, and Phil folds. And I was just like, how is this happening? Like, what is going on? Like, I can't watch this. I can't watch this. Even if you have a read that Daniel is really strong there, like, let's just suppose, like let's just give Phil all the possible credit in the world that he has Daniel just absolutely soul read, and he's like, oh, Daniel's got a big hand here. You still make that call with ace jack suited because you can just flop big with it. Like, because you would call with ace deuce suited, right? So of course you're going to fall with ace jack suited. Like, it's absolutely bananas to me.
So you're frustrated. You're watching it. You couldn't watch.
I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't. And then there's hands like the one that you're going to bring up that are just
this one. So this is one hand. So there's a highlight package out that I watched on YouTube, and this hand I don't get at all. And, you know, obviously I'm not a heads up no limit specialist or anything, but I every streak kind of just makes me go, what the heck is going on here? So they start with, well, let's see, they're 300, 600, and they're effective 162,000. So what's that? 250 big blinds deep, right? Effective, because Phil starts the hand with 162,000. Daniel starts with 238,000. Daniel has deuces on the button, deuce of diamonds, deuce of clubs on the button. He makes it 1,500. It's 300, 600. Daniel makes it 1,500. Phil has the 8-3 of clubs, and he makes it 4,800. 3 bets to 4,800. Daniel now 4 bets to 13,000. Phil 5 bets to 35,000. Daniel calls. So
I don't ask. I don't know.
I mean, well, I mean, it's hard to understand. So auto raise for Daniel, obviously, 3 bet to 4,800 with Phil with the 8-3 clubs. I mean, maybe not the best hand to 3 bet and out of position there when you're going to get called 100% of the time because you're playing so deep. But hey, whatever. I mean,
well, you're not going to get called. You know, the Daniel's going to fold like his 8-6 offsuits and stuff like that. Right. But yeah,
you're going to get called a lot. Let's just say you're going to get called a lot. 8-3 clubs. So he 3 bets. Daniel 4 bets to 13,000. That one was I wasn't sure about too either, and maybe we could ask Daniel.
I think it shows up a lot at this stack depth with the small pocket pairs. I mean, I'm not sure how often it shows up with, and yeah, I'm not a specialist in this either, and I haven't studied the pre-flop charts, but I think it does show up with some frequency. The small pocket pairs.
So 3 bet, the 5 bet to 35,000 when you're playing 162,000, I just don't get at all. But white magic, and somebody else knows what he's doing. So Daniel again calls the 5 bet. So we go to the flop is 70,000 in the middle, and the flop is Jack 10 6, Jack of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 6 of spades. Phil checks after 5 betting. Daniel bets 21,000 into 70. Phil calls. The turn pairs the board 6 of clubs. It brings a backdoor club draw for Phil. There's 112,000 in, and Phil now leads out for 42,000, and Daniel folds. So I guess I'm trying to the donk on the turn after check calling the flop. I mean, that one I understand a little bit more because if Phil is representing, an overpair to the board, then the 6 comes and pairs the bottom card, and now he loves the 6 on the turn. It seems like so that part I get. I guess
I mean, it's hard to have an overpair when he check calls the flop.
Yeah, except Phil. I mean,
but at this stack depth, right? So there's 70K in the middle. Daniel bets 21K. Phil has like 90 behind. He's not going to shove with an overpair.
Yeah. So and then Daniel, of course.
I mean, he can have aces, but like if you have aces, you're not going to lead the turn either, right?
So I'm stuck between wondering if this is Phil just like picking a hand to try and outplay Daniel and get him just to fold anything, and between that and maybe Phil's got some strategy concept here that I
mean I think it's interesting if it's not a club on the turn, right? Like if this is a 6 of diamonds on the turn, does he do this? Is it the equity from the flush draw that does it? Like I mean, I want to know what happens if the 3 of hearts, offsuit 3, or not a 3, I guess a 3 pairs them, but offsuit 4, just a king. Like what's his plan here? I mean, what is he going to try and represent? Like, I would really like to know what's going on. I mean, I think he just like, well, I have clubs, I'm going to bet. I think that's all that was sort of happening there. Because when you peel on the flop, you're like, Daniel bet very small on the flop, so it's not unreasonable to peel with like the 3 flush and the backdoor flush draws, backdoor straight draws there, hoping to pick up some equity on the turn. But then I guess, was he going to fire all of his equity? Was he like betting an offsuit 9? Like, was it, like I'd really love to know what his mapped out strategy was for all of this, but I don't know white magic. I don't speak it. So yeah.
Well, the other thing here is Daniel's range looks ridiculously strong, right? So he 5 bets pre.
Yeah.
And then he gets checked to and bets, and then Phil calls on the turn.
I mean, Daniel's the stone deuces is absolutely the stone bottom of his range here. Yeah. Like he's going to have a lot of stuff that connects with that board for sure. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't know. Don't ask me to explain it.
Phil picked the right hand, and he got Daniel to lay it down, and then went on to win. And obviously, I think Daniel probably had a bunch of side bets, and then 200K is a big deal. Like, Phil, I don't know how much he has of himself in the matches, but seems like he did pretty well by the overall.
I'm sure the investors are happy.
Yeah, and they'll continue because all he does is win. And but he's interesting spot now against Nick Wright, right? This guy's not a poker player. He's a talking head, from what I can tell, on Fox Sports West or Fox Sports One. Sorry, I have no clue if he's got any heads up no limit experience. He's going against Phil, who's on fire.
Wouldn't it be amazing if he went 3-0 against Phil? Because if Phil, like I just thought that. I was like, Phil could do, like he could do to Phil what Phil did to Daniel.
Because Phil's not quitting him, right?
Just have it. Yeah, no, absolutely. Phil is the first one. He's gonna play the second one. He could have himself talking to himself the way that Daniel has himself. Like Daniel's talking to himself on this thing. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it would be totally. All right, tons of live poker, and we'll fly through some of this because you and I are not super, we're not in the middle of it like the rest of Las Vegas. But the Win Millions was a huge hit, and this was a $10 million buy-in tournament that got 1,328 entries, and I think that's really significant. Obviously, we're coming off COVID. Everybody wants to play live poker. The partitions have come down. It's literally like poker was 5 years ago during a boom. Everybody is just jumping to play live poker, and this was a huge success. And obviously it was great that the winner ends up being Andrew Moreno, who takes down 1.4 million. And Andrew had thrown himself into live poker tournaments. I saw an interview with him. He had set a bunch of goals. He studied. He worked hard, and it sort of paid off. He's won a couple of tournaments, and now this big one. He's also, of course, the husband of the legendary
Christy Arnett
from Poker News, and she's actually expecting their first child very shortly. So we're perfect timing for Andrew, and it was a great result.
Kids are fucking expensive. Holy shit!
You're telling me, buddy. Mine are almost out of the house, so I'm looking forward to not spending $200 every time we go to food. But it's a great story there, and congratulations to Andrew, and a great story for the win, right? I mean, that's a huge tournament. To have, I think 3 people win $1 million in this 10K buy-in.
A lot of props on social media given to the win, to the way they ran the tournament too. I've been seeing just a lot of just super positive feedback. Like you said, field very big across the board. Most people comparing and contrasting to the Venetian, which was apparently an absolute shit show, despite having smaller fields. So, I mean, I don't remember who it was. Somebody tweeted like a picture of the Venetian lineup just kind of just snaking around, and it's just a disaster. And then the Win has essentially no lineups. Everything is just smooth as butter. So shout out. Good to see success for tournament venues that do it right.
Yeah. And the Win's always a great place to go play live or tournaments. One of my favorite, well, probably my favorite hotel in Vegas.
I was going to say you don't have to support Sheldon either, but I guess you don't either way anymore.
He can't be more deader.
It's just like a reflex, right? You say Venetian, and I have to say that. I have to say Sheldon. So it's just you got to train it out of me.
So speaking of Venetian, the 5K WPT Venetian is going on right now. Kitty Quo, Twitter, poker Twitter extraordinaire personality is the chip leader with 14 left, 910,000 up top. They're doing something interesting at the Venetian, and it's mystery bounties. I don't know if you've seen this, T. It's awesome.
I've heard, but you're going to have to give me the details because I don't know exactly what's happening.
So there's mystery bounties. It's a mystery bounty event. So part of the prize pool goes to the bounties, part goes to the where you finish in the tournament. And when you knock somebody out, you get to go over to this big drum. It's like the old school, like drawing drum.
Right.
And there's all kinds of numbers in there. And you can win, I think 100,000 is the top prize, and maybe 1,000 or 500, I think maybe, or some, amount of money. But there is one $100,000 prize in there. So every time somebody knocks somebody out, you go over to the wheel, and Chad Holloway is live tweeting every draw. So you're kind of waiting for it's this great thing. It's like a lottery, right? Where you can watch a guy win 100,000. You're zoomed in on wanting to see the guy win the 100K and go crazy. So, but it's a great concept, and recreational players. I'm recreational.
Is there a slot for a goat? Can you win a goat?
That would be good.
A mule.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Or a lemon, some ugly car from 1973 or something. But yeah, no, it's a great concept, and I think it's here to stay, hopefully, because people are reacting to it.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's good. We mentioned the PokerGo Cup is starting today over at the Aria. This is a 8 tournament series. Starts off with 4 10Ks, and then a 15K, a 2 25s, and then 50, and that finishes with 100K on July 13th. So that series has started as well. More poker. We have the World Series of Poker Online is underway. Jose Noboa. Let's go with Noboa. He wins the $500 no limit hold'em kickoff. Drew 1,200 entrants. Produced a first place prize of 105,000. He wins his first bracelet. Event number 2, also a winner won his first bracelet. However, a little bit more interesting. It was Manning Lozer, who has been playing nosebleed tournaments for a long time. Wins his first bracelet. Wins it online in the $600 monster stack. A little over 1,000 entrants. Donnell Deas wins event number 3, a $500 turbo. And poker blogger Andrew Nemi goes deep in that one. Final tables. So if you want to check out some final table content, I think he did a stream. Head on over to his YouTube stream. Check that out. Jeffrey Hoop wins event number 4, the $500 super turbo. And Jeremiah Williams wins event number 5, the 1K no limit Amax. They're underway with the 6th tournament. The numbers didn't blow everybody out of the water. But I think, there's a number of factors going on there with all the live poker going on. People are outside now rather than sort of inside playing, doing nothing but playing online poker. So, we'll keep an eye on how the numbers start to ramp up here when you get into.
Well, and also if you're comparing them to past years rather, where the World Series was actually in Vegas and people were, you just had this bunch of people in Vegas. Remember that it's only people in Nevada and New Jersey. So. You can't, it's very apples and oranges because people aren't specifically traveling to Vegas. And like you said, the ones that are probably are playing live poker.
Yeah, for sure. And Pennsylvania is going to come online. So Pennsylvania is online gaming is legal now. And WSOP does have a Pennsylvania ring-fenced site set to launch very soon. And there's a lot of optimism that they're going to join the player pool with Nevada, New Jersey, and is Delaware in the player pool? I don't think they are.
Yeah, I think so.
They are? Yeah, sorry, they are. So anyway, that looks to be, start that sort of community of states that are going to share players pool is getting larger and larger and larger all the time. It's taken forever. Jesus Christ, we've been talking about this. Seems like,
it must be 10 years now that we talked about like interstate compacts and stuff like that and the possibility of this. Because I mean, I worked at Ultimate Poker in 2012 and we were like, oh yeah, let's do these interstate compacts. And it's like, wow, it took us forever to get to 2 states. Now we're actually getting some real states with some real populations. So so Pennsylvania, you've got Michigan has poker now too. Let's hope just all the big states get in there.
So everybody's going to be moving to Pittsburgh to play online poker coming up. A little shot at Pittsburgh there. All right. One other thing that happened this week, and I thought this was interesting, was there was a decision by the Department of Justice in the U.S. The Wire Act has been an issue for online poker for a long time. And the Wire Act is a piece of law that was brought in the 70s, I want to say, way back when, to stop people from gambling over phone lines. And this was, I think, probably to stop sports betting at the time. There was the Wire Act came in and that regulated that. Well, the Department of Justice, after internet gaming became a thing, started using that piece of legislation to stop people from, regulating online gaming, or stop people allowing to have online gaming. Well, and the DOJ, this Wire Act has gone back and forth a couple of times with interpretations, and does it apply to online gaming? Well, the Department of Justice lost an appeal with the to appeal the Wire Act being applied to this, and they lost a case and they decided not to appeal. And why that's important is because a lot of these states and a lot of companies with lawyers decide that they don't want to get involved when this Wire Act sort of is undetermined. And does the Department of Justice want to use this to stop people from doing that? Lawyers want to cover everybody, and state legislatures, when you're looking at regulating online gaming, will be worried about the Wire Act. Well, now that the Department of Justice has decided not to appeal, this becomes pretty important for the future of all these other states that are looking at regulating online gaming, like we have sort of slowly trickling. We're getting bigger and bigger states. Obviously the big ones are California and New York and other ones that we can hope to come online. But now this paves the way for a lot of that stuff to happen, Terrence. Seems like good news.
Yeah, I mean, I'll trust you on it. Like, this stuff is again stuff that is well over my pay grade. I don't understand it well. I was never involved in the regulatory aspects of it, but any positive news is good for online poker in the United States. And it's like we just said, it's been far too long. It's taken far too long to get to this point. So good to get some legal clarity on it for sure.
World Series of Poker plans. What is your plan? Do you have one? Are you thinking of going? Have you clarified?
It's funny that you mentioned it. I'm totally excited. I was talking to our big group of friends, some of whom live in Vegas and some of them don't, like just planning when we're going to be in Vegas. I'm looking at the calendar, looking at events I'm going to play. And obviously for me, that's there's a strong bias towards Live at Hold'em, which most of those are sort of at the start of the World Series this year, which is different from in past years. I'm looking forward to a lot of stuff. I go to the World Series mostly at this point to hang out. The poker tournaments are sort of an afterthought. I will play them if they sync up, but I just want to see people and be social. And man, it's been 2 years of isolation. Like I want to go see friends, and I'll play some poker on the side too, but I want to hang out in Vegas. It's going to be great. September, October, and a little bit of November. The weather's going to be beautiful. But yeah, I'll play limit hold'em stuff. I'll play probably some small no limit stuff, maybe some small triple draw and other mixed games too, but no real plans firm right now other than hanging out with people and enjoying the best that Vegas fall has to offer. But, what about you?
So, MJ, the old co-host from the days gone by at the PokerCast, and I are going to head down. We're going to play the seniors event, and
amazing.
We're going to stay with Steve Friedlander as well, and we're all going to play the seniors, have a bunch of fun right around Halloween. So hopefully we can do, if you're down there, we can do, and Roscoe, we get a in-person DAT Poker podcast, maybe at Daniel's place or something.
Yeah, we'll do it in Daniel's trailer for like 15 minutes while he's between multi-tabling.
Roscoe, you up for a trip down to Vegas?
Of course, I want to go anywhere. But yeah, no, that would be so much fun.
We're not even allowed right now. We're just assuming that we'll be in there. I mean,
Essential travel. This is essential.
This is essential travel. It's work travel.
I don't even have the equipment we used to record on anymore. I have to figure out a new way.
What did you take it to the pawn shop? What happened there?
It literally expired. I plugged it in one day and they're like, it just doesn't run anymore. Sorry.
Like the Yankees didn't cover the spread.
Yeah, I had to sell it.
You should have seen this missed foul shot that I had the over and
yeah. Yeah.
The Chicago's lost.
The Chicago's, they've just been on a terrible run.
Hey,
it literally doesn't work. Yeah.
Did you guys see the Micros is back?
It did. I did.
Yeah,
see
that's awesome.
So, I even went back and watched like the last episode of the Micros. I loved the Micros back in the day. I was a super huge fan of. For those who don't have any idea what we're talking about, and if you're somebody who's only started playing poker in the last 10 years, you won't. But the Micros were a online cartoon that was created back in the day. Very funny, very relevant, timely stuff. I went back and watched it. I mean, it's a little bit dated, like the slang and the references. Like if you're in the midst of 2009 or whatever, they're hilarious. Like you get it. Like I get it. You get exactly what it's referencing. I remember that being a thing, but it's funny. You watch it now and it's like, that's funny. People used to talk like this.
Yeah. No, it's great. So they've come back.
But I'm glad to hear that it's back. Have they published an episode yet?
They're just doing comic strips now.
They're doing comic strips.
So it's, if you go to at the Micros on
I guess
Twitter,
that's a lot cheaper to produce. Okay. All right.
And Facebook. They have a Facebook page too as well. So give them a follow.
Well, I am sure they are still on the cutting edge of relevant poker comedy.
Yeah, indeed. All right. So one other thing that happened this week, and let's talk about this, is Landon Tice, who had a challenge going with Bill Perkins, and he spotted Bill. I believe it was 20,000 hands, and he spotted of 200, 400, no limit hold'em, heads up. He spotted Bill 9 big blinds per 100. And thought that was fine because Bill's a recreational player. Landon's going to study his bag off for a couple of months and get really good and crush the amateur. And he tweeted this week, he said, regarding the Perkins challenge, as a team, we've decided to surrender. We see no other way to proceed. He's a much stronger player than expected, and I took on more than I could handle. It was an unreal experience to be a part of. Maybe in the future, I'll try again. Good game, Bill Perkins. So this was caught everybody off guard for sure, because I think through like 4,000 hands of the 20, Landon was up about 8 big blinds per 100. So he was right sort of near break even. He had a bit of a downturn for maybe 1,000 hands where he ended up just when he quit, I believe, Terrence, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he had about a 3 big blind per 100 lead. So, we're only a quarter of the way through and he's, just taken a couple of losses and he's still sort of a small winner. And obviously has a lot of ground to make up, but this it just kind of seems strange to pull the plug at this point. It's not like he was down, 4 big blinds per 100. I don't know. What did you make of this?
I mean, well, first of all, I'm going to obviously take the opportunity to say, how could anybody possibly think that it would be conceivable that Landon wouldn't win? Anyway, but yeah, I guess I'm less surprised because I tend to assume that the people who are backing him, and from my understanding of what was happening, Landon had only a very small percentage of this actual action, and therefore he wasn't the one sort of calling the shots as to whether to continue. I imagine those people studied through these hand histories very, very closely. I wouldn't be surprised if they can sort of feed them into some solver software and exactly see how well Bill is playing, right? Because you have a lot of data. You have every hand at showdown. And so you get a very good sense of what somebody's error rate is, right? So let's say Landon's error rate is 3 BB 100 and if Bill's is 9, then it's unrecoverable, right? I think if it's close to 9 BB 100, they assume that Landon will get better faster than Bill will get better, and so they will continue. But I imagine that they've run the numbers and they've just decided like Bill is too strong. 9 BB is just way too much of a handicap. And they're not just doing this arbitrarily because like he had a couple bad sessions. It's not because of that, because, we saw this, when Daniel played Doug and he was getting slaughtered. Daniel was like, okay, well, I'm getting slaughtered, but I can look at these metrics. I can look at the all in AV and see that it's closer, right? Like you can do things to sort of see what the true edge might be. And I get the feeling that the people who are backing Landon have looked and they said, well, Bill's a lot better than we thought. And Bill has come out on Twitter. I don't have the tweet in front of me, but he basically said like, hey, I worked my ass off for this. Like I was a fish. I studied really, really hard. I had really good coaches. I went for this. Like this wasn't like the assumption was like, hey, he's a rich guy who doesn't give a fuck. It turns out that assumption is wrong. Like, cause he was highly competitive in this, wanted to try his ass off. It was probably slightly similar to like a Doug versus Daniel thing where one guy definitely went in as a very big favorite, but the other guy really studied, really worked hard to close the gap. And so no, I'm not really surprised, especially when you consider he's not playing his own money, so he doesn't get to make the decisions. And they're like, well, this is a lot to fade. And I don't know if we can cover 9 big blinds per 100. Even if we do, it might be even if we can get Landon to a point where he's like 9.5 BB 100 better. If it were even possible to know such a thing, would it even be worth it with the amount of variance that you're taking and potentially losing?
Yeah, hard to know. Yeah, like you said, Bill threw himself into it, and he's a family guy, obviously well-to-do, got his own businesses, but he decided to take this seriously. Spent a lot of time studying and working on his game, and Landon in his tweet says he's much better player than he thought. It seems like Landon, and Landon came on and made follow-up tweets that he made a bunch of mistakes. He shouldn't have, taken them as lightly. He should have negotiated better from the start. He's learned a lot of lessons. He's a young guy. Landon's not, I think he's early 20s, and he's going to learn a lesson from this. But it does sound like a bit like, to your point, that the backers kind of made this decision rather than Landon, right?
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of speculation about what really happened behind the scene. David Lappin, who I know Daniel's not a big fan of, but he did write a great article about the Landon story. There were even quotes from not direct quotes, but speculation on Jason Moe's Twitter that Landon was uncoachable. I mean, I think that's a really big, juicy piece of gossip that you can look at. Like the sort of assumption is that here's this guy who's 22 years old and he's grinded his way from 2 cent, 4 cent over to playing 50 and 100 or 25-50, or Landon plays big. The assumption is that this guy just sits in front of the solvers all the time. And there's been a lot of sort of criticism. And this is pure speculation. I don't know how true it is that he sort of got away from that studying. And a lot of people said, oh, he spent all his time doing podcasts, which is, it's kind of silly. Like, unless I don't know if there's enough poker podcast content in the world to actually spend all that time doing podcasts instead of studying.
This doesn't make you better at Heads Up No Limit.
You know what? I gave up poker for podcasting a long fucking time ago. But the fact is that I also knew I was doing that. But I don't think that's it. We'll see. I mean, the quotes that Adam mentioned about Landon, taking some lessons and learning maybe suggest that there's some truth to that, but it's all speculation. Only the people really on the inside know right now.
All right. So we'll see what's up.
I gotta say, I'm pretty sure this is the only bet I've ever heard of Perkins winning.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate.
He's won a bunch of prop bets. Like he's certainly won.
He won the Antonio Lunge prop bet.
Yeah.
I think most of the bets he makes, he kind of expects to lose and want to lose, and he's basically paying an entertainment vig, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's make this monkey jump through this hoop. If the monkey doesn't jump through the hoop, I get some money. It'll probably jump through the hoop, but it'll still be funny to watch him jump through the hoop.
And the monkey will be really happy. Indeed. Especially this monkey. This monkey was really happy.
Yeah. After months of pain.
Let's get on to some tweets.
Okay.
You're going surfing on the internet.
At Amek316, he writes, it's probably nice to be a poker player that started playing in the solver era. It sounds relaxing to just be able to think solver calls, so I call, without the stress of having to a decade of pent-up PTSD telling you, call is a punt, people don't bluff here while you're deciding, which I thought was interesting, right? Like, it's certainly freeing. Like, we think back to when we started playing and, you're exploitative most of the time, right? You're trying to do what's best in the moment against this particular player rather than frequencies and different things like that. And it's a bit freeing to be able to just say, well, and you know, it's probably overused. And I would think bad players will use it as a crutch, right? Oh, solver says I should call here 4% of the time. I call. You know what I mean? Like
the problem is if the solver says you call 44% of the time, you call 90% of the time, you're still punting.
But you can talk yourself into that once because it's some part of 4%. You don't do them all at once. You do them one at a time. So, but it's interesting, right? Because it's just a different mindset than when we grew up.
Yeah, but I totally understand it because I think if I had grown up in the current era, the solver era, I think like the way my brain works lends itself well to studying this. I think I, you know, all the, you know, respect to those who are out there, but I think I would have been a crusher because that is sort of the way that I study poker and it is the way that I studied limit hold'em. And there wasn't enough computational power to study no limit hold'em back then in this sort of way. But yeah, it is really nice to get that validation because one of the really hard things about poker is just like, you never know if you did the right thing. All we could do back in the day, you know, whatever, you know, you mentioned playing exploitively, but even if you were trying to play, you know, at optimal, at equilibrium, you didn't know what the equilibrium was. You just had to ask your friends like, hey, you know, Matt, I played this hand, like blinds are 2 and 4. I opened in the cutoff and this. And then like, you try to figure it out from there. Like, oh, what are all the hands that he could have? What are all the hands that I could have? And we just sort of used our brains, which our brains aren't very good at solving. They're good at, you know, speculating, but they're not going to tell you the right answer. So, because we just don't have that kind of computation power in our brain. But I agree, it is got to be liberating. I mean, chess has got to be the similar way too, right? Like, you know, you watch chess online, it's just like, you know what the best move is. You know, you could go back and study a game and like, that's the best move, you know, bishop f3, whatever, like that's the best move, you know. I think it is traumatic to like play hands and just be like, I have no idea what I was doing in that hand.
At Eliel Ezra, Bellagio Poker has been playing poker for 25 years with the legend Tex Dolly, obviously Doyle Brunson. Never seen him take a massage until today. And there's a picture of Doyle getting a massage in the Bellagio Poker Room, which is hilarious because if you ever walk in, like for the last, you know, decade or two, you walk in there, 2 or 3 guys are getting massages at the top table. Like it's just nonstop. Mm-hmm. And
you feel bad for the massage therapist. I mean, you know, you don't because those guys tip well, but sure. It's also like 7 hours of handwork.
Mueller's the best. Greg Mueller, our buddy, he will sit there for 5 hours and get a massage for all 5 hours. Doesn't care. But it's hilarious to me that Doyle will sit there for 20 years, watch these guys get massages day after day after day for the entire time, never get one, and then just decide to get one day.
Today's the day. Today's the day. It is.
I'm gonna get a massage.
I think, you know, things like that keep you young, right? Like new experiences. Doyle's 80, however many years old. It's like have new experiences. Like, you know, yeah. if you're 85 years old and you've never had sushi or something like that, just go have sushi. It might make you young. Like.
Awesome. Niall Farrell tweets, playing a little online poker like old times, and it's inspired me to share some age-old nuggets of poker wisdom. I'll start with this. If you get back shoved on by a pre-flop flatter after squeezing, it is literally always some pussy with a hand that should have 3-bet themselves.
I think this is great because it encapsulates, it's right, but it also encapsulates like the frustration of when you just have like ace 3 offsuit in that situation.
Yeah.
Or like king 5 suited, because like, you don't care nobody really ever calls it squeezing when you have queens,
right?
In that situation, you know, you're just like, oh, I have queens. Sweet. Like, you know, this guy just like back shoved on me when you queens. It's always when you have some nonsense that was like you said, you're supposed to squeeze with it 20% of the time.
It's good. Lexi Sterner, tell me you're a poker player without telling me you're a poker player. I'll lose 5K without flinching, but I'll have an existential contemplation on buying new socks because they're $20 and the holes in my current socks aren't that bad, which is so true, right? Like you're
what's the EV of new socks?
Yeah, exactly.
No EV in new socks.
You don't notice it's in the bottom. It's in your shoe. How are you going to notice a hole in there? It doesn't matter. But it's so true. Like, you know, you lose 5K in a blink and then you're sweating like coupons at wherever. It's crazy how poker.
Did you do the thing, Adam, where like you're ordering delivery food and then you're like free delivery over $50 and you look at your order's like $38. You're like, how can I just buy like $12 of food so I don't have to pay the $3 delivery fee?
Yeah. All kinds of stuff. I should probably make a list of some of the dumb stuff I do trying to save, money here and there, because you just do it. I don't know why. It's you're conditioned to hunt for EV as a poker player. Yeah. So, one example is our little grocery store here matches Walmart's prices, and the people in our grocery store are sick of me because I'll just like bring my Walmart app.
Oh, that is terrible.
And I'll just like show them, the bagels that
is terrible. They can't compete with Walmart.
And they're foreign, but their policy is to match prices for anybody. So, I mean, I didn't make their policy. I'm just taking advantage of it. And I like to go to that Save on Foods rather than Walmart, because Walmart sucks. But
Walmart does suck.
I mean, this kind of stuff, you're just conditioned to hunt for EV as a poker player your entire life. You do stupid shit with money. Like, I couldn't even start to list the dumb stuff I've done with money, but I'll grind out $2 on the 6 bagels to try and save a couple of bucks.
The views of this Rad Poker podcast are not approved by Daniel Negreanu, nor they represent the views of Daniel Negreanu.
They do not, I'm sure. All right, Roscoe, I believe we have a couple of that's it for tweets. We've got a couple of voicemails. Is that true?
We do. Yeah, we can try and do that. It's been a while. Can't even remember. Here we go.
Email number 1.
Hey guys, this is Sean from Vegas. I got a question for you. I play online. I play a lot of turbos and hyper turbos. And one problem that I'm having lately is like when we get late in the tournament where everyone's really short, like 15 bigs or something around that, that I find it really difficult to play with people who want to bet one big blind on the flop. Because it's so hard. Like I may have like 2 random overs or a backdoor straight, or I'm getting like 4-1, 5-1, 6-1 on a call or whatever. But I'm basically giving my money away for one big blind with not much of a draw to catch. And I'm also like having trouble playing these out of position. Like I can't keep giving up to one big blind bets, but I also don't want to be forced to play back and try to steal every time someone bets one big blind when it accounts for so much of your chip stack. So anyway, also. No disrespect, Daniel, but you getting swept by Helmuth is the most possible, like, funny thing that could have happened. So thank you for that, and maybe you can get him next time or something.
Terrence, do you know anything about one big blind bets? Have you ever dealt with?
I don't know a lot.
Daniel
probably knows a lot more than me, but there's no fucking way he was going to answer the question after that. I mean, I think you do have to peel a lot. One big blind is typically going to be like a sixth of the pot, right? Assuming like an opening.
Because he says he's sick of playing back, or he doesn't want to play back and he's sick of folding. Well, there's another option.
Yeah, it's just calling. I mean, it feels lame because it's sort of not how we're taught to play poker. You're supposed to be tight and you're supposed to be aggressive and you're supposed to fold when you don't have it and raise when you do have it. But that's just not the truth in poker, especially when you're in position. You can do a lot of peels. You can, especially a lot of these hands, this isn't the situation being mentioned, but Adam, you meant these weird hands where you have just kind of 2 back doors. You have like a little bit of overcard equity. You have some pair equity. You just kind of, I think, have to peel a lot with these hands. You also can make like exploitive judgments too, based on what people are doing. Like if you start noticing tendencies, are people doing this when they're weak? Are people doing this when they are they nutted? And then, because a lot of I've noticed a play that's very common among amateur players is they'll do like the under bet on the flop when they're nutted, when they just have a big hand, and then they'll bet like a lot more on the turn. And the thought process is that, so let's say Adam, like you have Jack 10 on 8-3 deuce, right? And I have a set of deuces and I bet one big blind. Obviously you're going to peel with the Jack 10 on the 8-3 deuce. I'm hoping you hit a Jack or a 10. Or, I really don't want you to hit a 9 because then you're open-ended. But like you might hit a queen or something. And now I'm going to bet like 2/3 pot or something like that. And that's what a lot of people do. If you see people employing that strategy, obviously there's you can adjust that in different ways. And then you're only going to call the one big bet with, strong draws and, or a lot of people just do this with nothing, right? A lot of people are just, they're firing the one big bet, the one big blind bet with almost air, and they will just fold to any aggression. Some of them are doing it with really kind of weak hands. They're doing it with like second or third pair, trying to find out where they're at, which is the old school way of poker thinking. So there's a lot of ways to exploit this if you start noticing population tendencies or specific people tendencies. But as a default, what would you do after they checked is a good proxy, right? Because if you think about it, if there's 7 big blinds in the pot, okay, I'm playing Adam heads up. Adam bets 1 big blind, right? So I'm getting 8-1 if there's 7 big blinds in the pot already. Now I'm getting 8-1. It's not that different from Adam checking, really. It's not that different. So if he checked to me and I would have bet, then I should raise. If he checked and I would have checked back, I should probably just call. And then obviously if I have total error, it's like king, queen, jack flop and I have 6-5, then I'm going to fold. But you have the opportunity to do that. So but I think probably you'll start seeing population tendencies and individual opponent specific things to do there. But you can a lot of the times kind of treat a min bet as almost like a check, but not really, because you're still going to fold your absolute bottom of your range.
Yeah, I mean, if people are doing it with their whole range, right? If they're betting one big blind with most of their range, they can't have it all the time.
They're costing themselves a lot, right? And they're costing themselves a lot when they have value too, right? So it's like important if they're betting one big blind when they have like vulnerable top pairs and stuff, like that really sucks for them, So if they're doing it every time, obviously they can't have it every time. They probably just have some tiny piece most of the time.
So you're printing by calling the one big bet. All right, let's move on to the next one, Roscoe.
All right, I think it's a hand history here, so listen carefully.
All right. Write it down.
Email number 2.
Hi, DAT Poker Podcast. Joey from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Got cut off on my last message. I'm going to try this again. I'm in a $500 buy-in tournament. We are down to 7 players, and I am 4th in chips with $225,000. Blinds are 4,000, 8,000. I'm under the gun +1 with pocket queens, queen of clubs, queen of hearts. I raised to 18,000. It folds to the small blind, who 3 bets to 75,000. Folds back to me, knowing that small blind is a good player and his range is probably ace-10 suited or better, and maybe pocket 9s and better. I opt to flat instead of 4-betting all in. I'm thinking if you had ace-king or aces or kings, I want to take a flop and see if the board flops ugly, I can get away and still have a little more than 18 big blinds. Flop comes ace of hearts, 9 of diamonds, jack of diamonds. Small blind bets all in. My thoughts here are, if he has aces or kings, I still have a queen or a 10 as an out. If he has a hand like a pocket 10s or jack 10 or ace 10, I block some of his outs as well. He could have something like ace 10 of diamonds or jack 10 of diamonds as well and make that same move. I don't think he would make this move with a set, and I also block queen 10, but I don't think he would 3-bet with queen 10 as well. I opt to call, and he shows ace of spades, jack of spades. Long story short, jack comes on the turn and I'm out in 7th place. What are your thoughts on just flatting pre-flop instead of 4-betting all in? Knowing now that he had ace-jack suited, I'm fairly certain if I had 4-bet all in pre-flop, he's folding ace-jack to me. Anyway, thanks for the advice. Keep up the good work on the show. Y'all have a great day.
So can I just quickly say that's about the worst flop. The reason he said to flat was to see if the flop comes bad. And ace-jack 9 with a flush draw is about as bad as it gets, right? You're losing to jacks, losing to queens, you're losing to ace-king, you're losing to ace-queen, you're losing to ace-jack, obviously. So
your only hope basically is that this guy mixes suited connectors into his range, right? Which like the absolute best players will have, but they're the minority.
The fold and the flop. Or sorry, I don't get the call after the shove on the flop. I don't get that. I don't know that I like the flat. And Terrence, I'm setting you up here, obviously, but I don't love the flat pre. I think I'm getting it in there pretty quickly. But if you're going to flat, then I think that's a flop you can fold on.
Yeah, I think you're getting it in there because you have to defend against, from like a GTO's perspective, you have to defend against the light 3-bets, right? So this guy said, well, he thinks he's a good player. Like, I think he only has premium hands. That's not actually what a good player will have. A good player will have all his premium hands as well as small aces. So, you know, ace five is probably the most common hand that you're going to see in that situation, because ace five is, you know, blocks an ace, and ace five makes a wheel. And you usually, when you play a hand against somebody who calls a 3-bet pre-flop, like, they usually don't have cards that block the wheel, so you're more likely to make a wheel. They don't have deuces, threes, and fours in their hands. So you have to keep those hands honest by 4-betting hands like queens and jacks here, and even ace king. You probably can call with aces. You can probably call with things like, I'm guessing, I don't know, I don't have like the solver inputs in front of me. This is stuff that you can actually find online in a number of places. I know there's a new product called Flop the Mole, I think, that does a lot of pre-flop solves. But you're gonna call with your Jack 10 suiteds. I think, you know, Jack 9 suiteds, things of this nature. And but I think queens and jacks are these hands that you're going to shove because they do not have an ace in them, but they are still dominating the ace X hands. So yeah, I think you got to get it in. As to whether you're supposed to get it in on ace Jack 9, as you said, it's a really bad flop, and you block queen 10, which is like you don't want to block queen 10. You want them to have queen 10 because that's one of the few hands you have equity against. But again, if it's a guy who can have queen 10, then it's probably a guy who can have ace 5, which is a hand you can get them full pre-flop. It's probably a guy who could have 7-8 suited. It's probably a guy who can have like king 8 suited, like things of this nature that are the bluffs. And so yeah, I think getting it in pre-flop there is right. As for whether he would have folded pre-flop, yeah, probably, because you have so much strength. Like 7-handed, there's ICM considerations. You've opened from an early position. I don't know that I like his 3-bet. I think his 3-bet is actually wrong. I think his 3-bet is actually a call. Again, check the solver outputs. Everything I say could be bullshit, but I think it's probably correct in a tournament situation to actually just flat with the ace jack suited there, because you know, imagine yourself in your position, early position, open, second under the gun, opens, you have ace jack suited, you 3-bet, and the guy 4-bets. It's pukey, right? It's gross. You don't like it. You're folding away a lot of equity here.
Good. That's it, Roscoe.
That is all.
All right. That's going to do it for this week of the show. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to you guys getting together, and have run good in all the tournament poker that's going on, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.